Hello everybody, welcome to St Michael's Bishop's Cleeve on Sunday, where are we? Sunday the 24th? No, 23rd is it, of January 2021. No, I do know who I am and where I am. So welcome to you this morning, and if you're watching live on this Sunday morning and you're in this area southwest, you've probably woken up to some lovely snow. It was fantastic watching it come down early this morning. Great, those lovely great big clumps of snow, and everything outside just seemed so beautifully quiet. It was beautiful. It's settled down now. I can just about spot people up on the hill, Cleeve Hill on the edge of the Cotswolds here, having fun right in the distance. So recognise though, snow can be great for loads of people and not so good for others. So hope all those of you are thinking about how am I going to get out today, get to the shops, that you'll have someone that can help you today. So welcome to St Michael's Online. If you're new with us, I'm Malc. I'm the rector, or another term is vicar, leader at the church at St Michael and All Angels here on the edge of Cheltenham in Bishop's Cleeve. And so do say hi if you're coming on board, I should say. It's great to see your names. And as I often say, it's just one way in which we can encourage one another to be church when we can't be physically together. Just to see other people who are there can be, you know, simple encouragement to people. So if you've watched but you never actually said hello yet, but you feel brave enough today, do say good morning to us. That'd be lovely. So this being Sunday live, if you're watching live, then we do have coffee and chat on Zoom straight afterwards. So do come and join me for that if you're watching live on Sunday morning. If you're watching at some other time, then I hope that what you'll hear today or watch will encourage you, inspire you, all those things. Thank you also for those of you who are looking on our website, where you'll pick up other information about what we're doing, what we're up to. Thank you for those of you who've looked in my little prompt the other week in terms of our financial giving. You know, we have got some issues there. And so thank you for those of you that have signed up to give regularly or for one-off gifts. We've got Virgin Giving there. It's really easy to do. And we, like many churches, although we encourage as many people as possible to just give by regular giving, and all the gift aid is claimed for us, it's same as admin. That can be set up with a simple phone call from our website. The other thing is that we do miss out on the money that people give on a Sunday morning when they come to church and when they visit, and all of our other services that we have. So we're missing out on that. So if this is church for you and you want to be giving in that way, then that's really helpful to us. So thank you. So that's enough of that. Let's begin. Today's theme is how God helps us to live well in the whole of our lives, in body, mind and spirit. And I want to encourage us today to see how God is our well-being. I recognise that not all of you watching will believe in God. You may have doubts about God, but I hope there's going to be things here that are going to encourage you anyway and get you thinking, whether you consider yourself a believer at this time or not. So in a nutshell, this is what's coming this morning. You know, our day-to-day well-being, you know, is very much a hot topic at the moment. We recognise that. You know, how we live physically, mentally, spiritually, and how all those things are connected. And we recognise too that our mental health is even under greater threat during this pandemic, during this third lockdown. And so, you know, we are perhaps thinking about what it's going to mean to live well during this new year, this year of 2021. And we're going to be thinking about what well-being means this morning, just some brief ideas about what well-being could be about, and see if you agree with me. Put stuff up in the comments as we go or afterwards if you'd like to. We're going to see how God's got something to do, or everything to do with all of this, with our well-being, physical, mental and spiritual health. We're going to hear how it's God's intention for us to live well in all these areas, and that he can help us. And at the end, I'll say something about the 6-week series that we've got starting next week, we're going to be looking at some well-known Bible stories and see how God treats those who are exhausted, rejected, hopeless and heartbroken. So that's a bit of a menu of what's coming up this morning. So I'm going to begin though with a bit of scripture from the book of Lamentations. It's a book in the Old Testament. It's one of those books that's real, very real, about when life is rubbish. And, you know, sometimes it hardly feels like it's worth living. So Lamentations in the Old Testament, we read these words and maybe they'll just be a help for us to set us up for today. From Lamentations chapter 3. I will never forget this awful time, says the writer, as I grieve over my loss. Yet I still dare to hope when I remember this. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Just again, we see how relevant the Bible is to every age, to our setting today. I will never forget this awful time as I grieve over my loss. Yet I still dare to hope when I remember this. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. So may that be true for us today. May God bless us as we listen to these messages now. May there be something that is of real help for us today and in the days to come. And as I say, this is just the beginning of what we hope is going to be a whole topic for our year as St. Michael in terms of living well in body, mind or spirit. So we're not going to be able to cover everything today, but we're just looking to unpack things as we go and hopefully a programme of stuff to come in the weeks and months ahead. So what we can notice, first of all, that it's good that we're talking about well-being and we're talking about mental health much more these days. You know, it's reckoned that 1 in 4 of us will have a diagnosable mental health condition in our lifetime. 1 in 4 of us. 69% of adults in the UK report express feeling somewhat or very worried about the effects of COVID-19 and the effect it's having on their life. 69%. The most common issues affecting well-being are worry about the future, 63%, feeling stressed or anxious, 56%, and feeling bored, 49%. I hear that one quite a bit actually. One study found that taking account of pre-pandemic trajectories, mental health has worsened substantially, 8% on average, as a result of this pandemic. Groups, as we know, haven't all been equally impacted. So some reports will say how young adults and women can find things worse. Those who had mental health issues pre-pandemic. One I read recently was about how students, university students, can be amongst the lowest and those that feel so lonely at this time. And you'll have known other cases, other things that you'll have read about the impact on our well-being, our mental health of this pandemic. So it's good that we're talking about all this. But it's not always been the case that we've talked about mental health, has it? If you're an older person, I'll let you be the judge of what that means, then you may look back to when you were young or a young adult and may think people never spoke about things to do with mental health or depression, or someone's got, you know, the black dog just hounding them at the moment. We just didn't talk about those things. You know, maybe we felt that someone was a bit different and they seemed to be unwell, but it wasn't something we could see. They weren't walking with a limp. They didn't have a bruise or a cut or stitches or anything like that. But something was going on the inside, which we didn't really understand and didn't want to talk about. So they may have got compassion, like it is they got some ridicule, or they were kept at a distance or avoided. I remember an uncle of mine, Jamaican uncle. He wasn't a true uncle. He was just one of my dad's best friends when my dad came over from Jamaica, Uncle Edgar. And he had a daughter, and his daughter, a grown-up daughter. And I always remember telling my dad that she had some problems, and the word that was mentioned was schizophrenia. I only met her a few times. I didn't really get to hear her story, but all I know was somehow this word schizophrenia was couched around with mystery and danger and, you know, possible criminal activity. We'll have all had, depending on our age and whether we're older, can look back over the decades and think, well, there's a time when we didn't really talk about mental health issues. It was scary. We didn't understand it. We couldn't see it. So thank God that we are rightly thinking and talking about what it means to live well in body, mind and spirit. So well-being is a hot topic, and rightly so. So what about definitions then? I've just got a couple here. You might have your own as well, so please feel free to put them up in the comments if you want to. So the Oxford English Dictionary, their definition is the state of being comfortable, healthy or happy. Some of us in the week, was it at leadership team? I can't remember where, it might have been there. We're thinking, what's about that? What's that or all about? The state of being comfortable, healthy or happy. Okay. One Church of England definition goes like this. Your well-being is your personal, that's your subjective, your personal evaluation of how well you function, including responding to the problems you face. Your well-being is your personal evaluation of how well you can function, including responding to the problems you face. I mean, that's a really good point, isn't it? Our sense of our own well-being is dependent on many factors and many different personality types, our background, where we live, our economic state at the moment. There are all sorts of things that mean two of us could face exactly the same circumstances and yet respond differently. Someone may hear some bad news or something that's changed about their plans for the future and might just be quite cool about it. Say, okay, well, something else will come along. Somebody else could have a panic attack about it. So our well-being could well be to be how we perceive ourselves to respond to the life that comes our way, the life that we live. And of course, there's a much greater understanding of how body, mind and spirit, all work together, how they're all one thing affects the other. So I suppose if you took someone who was physically ill, perhaps, and so was unable to work. And because they were unable to work, they find themselves at home a lot. Because they're unable to work, they're not around other people. We know that's good for us. They weren't feeling the kind of fulfillment of doing something they enjoyed and feeling worthwhile. So while sat at home, they begin to feel unwell, not just physically, but mentally as well. They are feeling lonely. They're feeling shut out. They're feeling perhaps lonely. So their mental health is beginning to be affected. And their spiritual health can be affected about that, because our spiritual health is thinking about, who are we? What's my purpose? Why am I here? So you can see how these things are all interwoven. They affect one another. And of course, you will have your own examples of that as well. So we're talking about well-being, about this, how we live well in body, mind and spirit. We're thinking about what some of the definitions of are that. And can I just say that well-being and mental health are interconnected, but aren't always exactly the same thing. So somebody could be unwell physically perhaps, but actually feel quite fulfilled in their lives, and their mental health might be really good. I watched a film, so kind of mountain adventure film last week. It was talking about 3 Americans. They were canoeing down this amazing river with rapids. I think it was in the Grand Canyon, somewhere around then, I think. And 3 of them, and they were having a fantastic adventure going through some of these terrible rapids together. It's really frightening. One of them was blind. One of them had 2 prosthetic legs. The other had PTSD. They'd all been in the army. They'd all fought in Afghanistan and come back with all these different illnesses, as it were. But together, they seem to have such a sense of purpose, well-being, camaraderie, fun, and joy together. So our physical mental health can affect our well-being, but they're not always exactly the same. But of course, there is a link a lot of the time. So what's God's got to do with all this then? Because there's so much that can be said about well-being. There's so many ideas and tips and programs and apps and websites, advisors, gurus out there. But of course, we're coming at this a particular angle. As Christians, as the Christian church, we do think that God has fundamentally got something to do with our well-being. So the Bible doesn't have, the word well-being doesn't appear in many of our English Bible translations, but the Hebrew word shalom does, and that's a word that many of you will have heard. Normally it's translated, shalom is normally translated as peace, but that word peace, as you've heard me say before perhaps, is far more than just the absence of conflict. We're not at war anymore, so we must be at peace. It's far more than that. Shalom encompasses wholeness, health and well-being, and not just about wholeness for me, but wholeness in the community as well, wholeness around me. The biblical shalom means rightly and joyfully being related to God well, to others well, to myself well, and to God's created world well. Shalom means well-being in every area of life. It's far more than just kind of, we'll have moments of peace today, hopefully, where we sat up, wrapped up warm, feeling even more peaceful and cozy because outside there's cold, outside there is cold. You know, yes, I love those moments. We need those moments, but the shalom, the biblical shalom and wholeness that God wants for us is much bigger than that. We could look back, I suppose, to right into the beginning of our Bibles at Genesis chapter 1, where God made us in the first place. And there we have a picture of that well-being in the presence of God. You know, we are made in God's image, we hear. One of the words, the Hebrew word that's there is icon, actually, which is a word that, you know, we still use today, something that represents something. An icon is something that represents something, and we are made in God's image to represent him. We bear something of his divine spark within us, if you like. At one time, we walked in the garden, Adam and Eve walked in the Garden of Eden with God. They were there made in his image, in relationship to each other, in relationship to God, and they were there to tend God's creation and to look after it in creative ways. So they were kind of co-workers with him in his ongoing creative and tending the earth and looking after it. So that was a wonderful, wonderful time. There was that wellness, wholeness, everything was just fantastic as God made it to be. Then we know we messed up. Sometimes we refer to that as the fall. We gave in. We decided to try and do life without God, and we've been paying the price since. And then so we might think, well, we are icons to start with, but now we are broken icons. Something that we are meant to be is broken. So the good news is that God always wanted to have a way where he's going to fix that. And so the story of the Old Testament is God sending prophets and leaders who kept saying to God's people, come back to God and things will go well with you again. And so eventually God sent his son Jesus, which we've been celebrating just recently. And Jesus, in his life, in his teaching, in his death, in his resurrection, he puts back together what was broken. And the beauty of what he did for us, the theological term we sometimes use is atonement. What the atonement achieves for us is that wholeness again, that relation fixed again between us and Father God, between us and ourselves, between us and other people, and between us and God's world. Atonement. I always remember being taught when I was young at Sunday school, one way of thinking of the word atonement is to pronounce it like this, at one-ment. Isn't that wonderful? At one-ment. At one with God, at one with me, at one with others, at one with God's world. God has restored the sense that we can be well and whole, living in shalom through Jesus. And Jesus himself said, I have come that you might have life and have it to the full. It's my favourite Bible promise, John 10:10. I've come that you might have life and have it to the full. But let's face it, okay, we bring God into it all, we understand something about that, but it is so difficult, particularly in this time of lockdown again, when life just seems really tough. If not for us personally, we know someone who's really going for it. We read about them, we see them on the news. It's hard. Now, what is the famous number one that the pop group Boney M sung? Can you remember? It was their number one. They had loads of hits, but there was one particular one of theirs that begins with the words, can you remember it? The one I'm going to quote, by the rivers of Babylon. How many of the millions of people who bought the record, if you're young, you don't want to know what that means, buying a record, to Google it. Although I understand vinyl's coming back anyway. How many people didn't realise that that's actually straight out of the Bible from Psalm 137? And the idea that Psalm 130 is written to some people who were God's people but were far away from Jerusalem, far away from the place where the temple was, the community, you know, a religious heart. Because they've messed up, God always said, unless you come back to me, some other people are going to come in, they're going to take over Jerusalem, they're going to take away your best people, and that's what happened. They've been taken away into exile. They're having such a tough time. That's where the other reading from Lamentations at the beginning came from. They're having a difficult time. And this psalm, of which Boney M sing by the rivers of Babylon, comes from that season. Listen to this. How can we live well in times like this? Psalm 137, verses 1 to 6. Beside the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept as we thought of Jerusalem. We put away our harps, hanging them on the branches of the poplar trees, for our captors demanded a song from us. Our tormentors insisted on a joyful hymn. Sing us one of those songs of Jerusalem. But how can we sing the song to the Lord while in this foreign, pagan, faraway land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget how to play the harp. May my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth if I fail to remember you, if I don't make Jerusalem my greatest joy. It can be hard to sing the songs of joy when we feel far from the life we knew, when we feel we're in a faraway and distant, strange place, where we're not in control, where somebody else or maybe something else in our setting now feels like it's ruling over us and controlling our lives. Pause. Just notice again how the Bible is so relevant for our lives today. How can we sing songs when we just feel so far away from the lives we knew, the lives we love? So how are we to live well then in this foreign, unknown place, this COVID land, if you like, where something else seems to be in control, where we long from home and we don't know how long we're going to be here? Well, we can find encouragement to live well now amongst the same people of God who are away in exile. And it comes from another part in the Old Testament, one of the great Old Testament prophets called Jeremiah. Jeremiah's job was again to keep telling God's people God's message, which was again, turn back, come back to God. Things will go well for you. Often he was saying, look, even though you've really messed up, God is compassionate and kind, wants to bless you and look after you. So we read then from Jeremiah 29, verse 1, these words. Well, actually, I'm going to read from verse 4 in a moment. But Jeremiah wrote this letter from Jerusalem to the elders, the priests, the prophets, and all the people, all God's people who have been exiled to Babylon, same Babylon, by King Nebuchadnezzar. Great name. So from verse 4 of chapter 29, here it is. This is the message from God, Israel's God, to all the exiles I've taken from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and make yourselves a home. Put in gardens and eat what grows in that country. Marry and have children. Encourage your children to marry and have children so you'll thrive in that country and not waste away. Make yourselves at home there and work for the country's welfare. Pray for Babylon's well-being. If things go well for Babylon, things will go well for you. Yes, believe it or not, this is the message from God of the angel armies, Israel's God. Don't let all those so-called preachers and know-it-alls who are all over the place there take you in with their lies. Don't pay attention to their fantasies they keep coming up with to please you. They're a bunch of liars preaching lies and claiming I sent them. I never sent them. Believe me, God's decree. This is God's word on the subject. As soon as Babylon's 70 years are up, and not a day before, I'll show up and take care of you as I promised and bring you back home. I know what I'm doing. I have it all planned out. Plans to take care of you, not abandon you. Plans to give you the future you hope for. Well done for hanging on there. It's the longest reading, but what a fantastic bit of the story. What are they to do then? They are to live well now as best as they can. So maybe here's the encouragement to us too, as we think about living well in these dark times, that we can live well now as best as we can. Not just looking forward then, thinking, although I know we do that, looking forward to when there's either a cure or, we've all been, had the vaccine, all that stuff. We look forward to those days. Of course we do. Some of us may even be booking holidays. But it's not just about a looking forward, it's about living in the now as well. Seeking to live well now. Those people then were encouraged to build, to plant, to harvest, to marry, to have children and grandchildren. You see the idea of settling now, even though we're not where we want to be, but to live well now. Make yourself at home here. Now, that's going to look different for each of us as we think, well, okay, that's what he was saying then. Is that what God's saying to me now? What might that look like? Well, I'm going to leave that for you to finish the talk in that sense, what all that might look like. There's a couple of things I'm going to mention in a moment. Build, plant, marry, have children, make yourself at home here. Work for the well-being of Babylon, they were told. You know, so we can work for the well-being of our villages. We can pray for the well-being of our villages. They're encouraged to pray for Babylon. They might have thought, no, that's who's oppressing us. We don't like Babylon. We don't want to be here. But they're encouraged to pray for Babylon. Pray for the government, maybe, is what we can do. Pray for our leaders. Pray for our village council, our parish council here and the leaders there. They're doing a great job for us, a hard job. So we can pray for one another, everybody that's working in our community during these difficult times, all our shopkeepers, those that aren't able to work and, you know, who usually run our restaurants and our pubs and our cafes. We can pray for them too. Pray for them, Jeremiah says, because then it will go well for all of us. That's what this well-being is like. It's not just about me grabbing some well-being for me, about my mental health, spiritual health, physical health. It's about us together as well. That's how God meant it to be. He wanted wellness for the individual, yes, but wellness for the nation of Israel and for all people. They're encouraged to mind the voices of the false prophets. So all I'd say at this one is, hopefully I'm not one of those, but all I'd say is this, you know, just mind how we respond to the news, how often we watch the news and how we respond to social media, how we respond to that, you know, friend in our friendship group is always saying something a bit controversial or is against the flow of what the science is saying or all those sorts of things. Just be mindful of those things as we listen to them and, you know, decide that we can make up our own mind responsibly, get the information we need, but just be careful what we listen to. The daily trends that come up on the news every day. I heard one of the reporters, one of the scientists involved in producing that stuff, was just saying he wishes the BBC and others would only just show the trend of what's going on across some weeks or months rather than the daily thing, because it becomes a big daily worry thing. So I now tend to mute it during those times and try and listen to the trends that are going, because I don't want those kind of anxiety spikes in my life. So we're to mind the voices of the prophets, but then it ended with this. We can trust God. He says, I'll show up and take care of you as I promised and bring you back home. He said it then, and I believe it now. I know what I'm doing, says God. I've planned it all out. Plans to take care of you, not abandon you. Plans to give you the future you hope for. I see God wanting us to be whole and to be well. And I see that he is our well-being. It's all about this relationship with him, even when we feel we're in a far distant land, away from the home and the things that we love so much. So here's my small point. One thing, I know there's loads of advice out there, but this is what was on my mind this morning, or yesterday as I was just thinking about this. One thing I've been encouraging myself, and maybe this fits with you, maybe it doesn't, is kind of recalibrate, rethink for us what a blessing is. Just like those people then were thinking it's probably a complete curse all the time to live in Babylon. But God was saying, look, just live a blessed life here. Look for blessings now. So one thing I'm trying to do a bit more is enjoy ordinary TV. You know how we can sit there, if you watch TV, you're just looking for that blockbuster film, that thing that's going to get the heart racing. It's going to be super excitement. It's going to be great chases in it or fights, whatever it is you like. But you know that means that sometimes when you sit down, if you've got Netflix or anything like that, or Sky Movies or something, you know, the first 20 minutes of sitting down is just trying to search through to find something that you like and you think is going to tick all those boxes. So maybe we recalibrate what blesses us, just to find something that's regular and ordinary. Agree sometimes that 3 stars out of 5 might be okay. Maybe that's why there's so much boredom around, because we haven't been taught, and we don't always teach our children just to live well with little. I just remember reading something, another talk really, about, encourage your children to live with boredom. Because they find things to do, they find value and blessing in little things, and us too as adults need that. So we can notice the small, the seemingly insignificant can be a blessing to us, be it things in nature or with other people as well. We can spend some time wondering at something, just being and standing in wonder before a tree or a flower or a view, or listening to a piece of music or something. How about listening to a piece of music while not doing something else at the same time? Well, that would be a novelty, and I struggle with that, I know. Walk sometimes without headphones on. Talk to strangers. Strangers are only just lovely people we haven't yet met. But the science tells us that actually talking to strangers is good for our mental health. And so there's some things to think about. So to conclude then, I reckon that God wants us to live well in body, mind and spirit. He is our shalom. He made us to live in beautiful, loving union with him, ourselves, one another and his world. That's the Genesis story. And through Jesus, he has made that possible again. When we say yes to healthy physical living, when we say yes to helping each other with our being emotionally and mentally well, when we say yes to looking after the us within, the spiritual us, we are saying yes to the whole person that God created us to be. May we know that our God is our help today. May we find in him mental, spiritual and physical well-being. May God bless our doctors and nurses, those friends that we confide in, that we might have from them company, a listening ear, and occasionally some good advice. Where would we start? I will never forget this awful time as I grieve over my loss, yet I still dare to hope when I remember this. The merciful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Thanks for watching and listening today. Over the next few weeks in February, as a church, we're going to be running a 6-week course called Lifting the Lid, which is going to focus on our faith and mental health. We as a church want to be creating spaces where we can learn and listen, talk together about stuff that matters, like mental health. And it's important for our church community that we can talk openly about the whole of our life, encouraging one another to live well, body, mind and spirit. So we're piloting that course with some of our church's established life groups. If it works out well, as we get feedback from it, then we may well look to open it up to the community and run some other groups that you might be able to be a part of. In the meantime, come and join me in these following weeks as we are going to be looking at 6 well-known Bible stories to understand and see how God treats those who feel exhausted, rejected, hopeless and heartbroken. So may God bless you, and may you find in God healing and love and new and fresh hope. And if you want to join me in Zoom because you're watching live on this Sunday morning, come back in a minute or two. The invite should come up, and look forward to spending some time with you. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.